What if the lake near your hometown held a secret for over a decade, 12 years of silence, corruption, and a girl still fighting to be found? Imagine discovering that the people sworn to protect you had buried the truth all along. Would you stay silent or demand justice? If you've ever lived through something like this, share your story in the comments. And while you're here, tell us where you're watching from. Your voice matters. The summer heat of Georgia had always felt heavy, like a quilt someone forgot to pull away. In August of 2003, that heat pressed down on Lake Sinclair, the wide reservoir outside Athens, shimmering like polished glass under the noon sunday. Boaters skimmed the surface, unaware that beneath their wake lay a secret sealed in rust and silence for more than a decade. The discovery came quietly at first. A team from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources had been contracted to do a side-scan sonar survey of the lake, a project they told the public was about environmental mapping. The technicians, accustomed to logging tree stumps and submerged logs, weren't expecting to find a perfectly rectangular anomaly, a man-made shadow sitting wrong against the soft curves of the lake bed. They marked the coordinates, thinking it might be construction debris. But when divers went down the next morning, they didn't come back up with just debris. They came back with history clawing at their suits. The object was a shipping container, a full-size steel box coated with algae, sunk deep into the silt. And inside, when the water was pumped out, the search team glimpsed something that froze every breath. A car. Not just any car. A red 1991 Ford Mustang convertible. The very same car that had disappeared with Sarah Monroe and her best friend Jessica Hayes on a July night 12 years earlier. For 12 long years, their names had been whispered in the town of Athens like a curse. Sarah and Jess, the girls who ran away. That's what Sheriff Brody Vance had called it. Teenagers chasing adventure, he'd told the reporters back then. They'll turn up in Florida or California. The case was closed within weeks, shelved under the weight of indifference. But families never close cases. Not really. Families keep waiting. And no one had waited longer than Elena Monroe Ellie, to those who knew her. She was just 17 the night her sister vanished. She remembered the laughter, the popcorn, the drive-in theater screen lighting up with dinosaurs and explosions, and the last flashbulb moment of Sarah smiling on the hood of that Mustang. That memory had chased her through every year since. A photo that played in her head on repeat until she thought she might go mad. Now she was 29, living in a small, tired apartment in Athens, preparing to finally leave. She had packed her boxes, taped them shut, convinced herself that moving to Atlanta would mean moving forward. But the knock on her door that morning undid all of it. Detective Miles Corbin wasn't like the others she had dealt with. He was methodical, quiet, with the kind of steady eyes that told you he'd seen more than he could ever say. He didn't waste her time with apologies or empty reassurances. He simply said the words that turned her world inside out. "We found your sister's car." She remembered leaning against the wall because her knees wouldn't hold her weight. The sound of packing tape ripping from the boxes felt like an echo of something being sealed shut, yet her life was being pried open all over again. On the drive to Lake Sinclair, she gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. The pine trees blurred by, the asphalt shimmered in the heat, and in her chest throbbed a truth she'd fought for 12 years to outrun. Sarah was never coming home. But why had the car been entombed in a shipping container? Who goes to such lengths unless there's something far darker to hide? When she arrived, the lakeside marina no longer looked like a weekend haven for fishermen. Police cruisers lined the shore. Forensic vans beeped in reverse. Yellow tape cordoned off the dock. Out on the water, a barge swayed gently with the weight of a crane, its cables slicing into the lake like harpoons. She spotted him then, Robert Hayes, Jess's father. Time had weathered him, hollowed out his eyes, bent his shoulders under invisible weight. He stood apart from the others, trembling hands twisting together as if in prayer. For 12 years, Robert had been another shadow in her grief, a face she could barely stand to meet at vigils or anniversaries. But seeing him here, she felt a kinship forged in fire. Two families swallowed by the same night. Still, when she reached him, there was no relief in his face. No catharsis. Instead, there was fear raw and jagged. He whispered, "They weren't supposed to find it. Not like this." And then he turned away, stumbling toward the parking lot as though running from the very truth that Ellie had come to confront. She didn't have time to chase him. A groan of metal rose from the lake as the crane pulled its burden from the depths. The shipping container breached the surface, dripping lake water like blood from an open wound. Slowly, the doors gaped wide, and there it was, the red Mustang, dulled by silt, headlights glaring blankly as though even death hadn't closed its eyes. Silence fell over the marina. Officers held their breath. Ellie's chest tightened until she thought she'd suffocate. And then the forensic team moved in, white suits gleaming in the Georgia Sunday. Minutes later, Corbin approached her. His words were soft, but cut sharper than glass. "There are human remains inside. Dental records confirm it's Sarah." The air collapsed. Her vision swam. After 12 years of imagining Sarah free somewhere married, raising children, painting houses by the sea, those daydreams collapsed into a single brutal word: murdered. Ellie wept in silence. Hot tears streaked her cheeks as the weight of absence became the weight of truth. But even in the storm of grief, another question howled louder. Where was Jess? That night, in the sterile chill of the coroner's office, she learned more than she wished. Blunt force trauma to the skull. Pre-mortem. Sarah hadn't drowned, hadn't crashed. She had been killed deliberately before being sealed in steel and sunk like evidence no one was meant to find. The horror of it clawed at Ellie's chest. But then came the second blow. There was no trace of Jess inside that car. Only a denim jacket, a purse, belongings but no body. The uncertainty was a new form of torture. Had Jess escaped? Had she been killed elsewhere? Or, God help her, was she still alive, hidden like some bargaining chip in a game Ellie had never known existed? As she left the coroner's office, Ellie felt the cold air cling to her skin like guilt. She should have gone with them that night. She should have stayed. If she had, maybe none of this would have happened. That thought had haunted her for years, and now it sank its claws deeper. But Detective Corbin wasn't finished. He walked her to the car, his tone low, steady, almost conspiratorial. "Miss Monroe," he said, "this wasn't random. You don't put a car in a shipping container without planning, without resources. That takes trucks, cranes, money. This was organized." Ellie turned to him, her grief now sharpened into rage. "Then find out who did it," she said. "Find out why." Corbin nodded, but his eyes were shadowed. He didn't tell her then what he suspected, that the sonar survey wasn't routine at all. That someone had fed the state those coordinates, had wanted the container found after 12 years of silence. And if someone wanted it found, then someone else might be watching, waiting to see what the police would do next. As Ellie drove back into the sweltering Georgia night, the lake glittered in her rearview mirror, holding its secrets like a graveyard. She gripped the wheel, her heart pounding. Sarah was gone. Jess was missing, and a stranger's voice from her memory rose again. They weren't supposed to find it. Not like this. What did Robert Hayes mean, and why was he so afraid? Ellie pulls into her driveway, headlights sweeping across her packed boxes stacked by the window. For a moment, the world feels eerily still. Then, from the shadows near her building, she sees a figure standing too long, watching her. By the time she blinks, the figure is gone. Who else knew the truth buried under Lake Sinclair? The night air in Athens was heavy with crickets and humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and reminded you that summer in Georgia never truly slept. Ellie Monroe parked her car in front of her apartment complex, her headlights catching the stacked boxes she had so carefully taped shut only days before. They looked absurd now, relics of a life she had convinced herself she could move on from. The idea of Atlanta, of starting fresh, felt like a cruel joke. Because Sarah was no longer missing, Sarah was dead, and Jess was still unaccounted for. Ellie killed the engine, sitting in silence long after the headlights faded. She thought about Robert Hayes's pale face at the lake, his words replaying like a broken record. They weren't supposed to find it. Not like this. He hadn't sounded like a grieving father. He had sounded like a man who knew something he shouldn't. She grabbed her keys and stepped out. That's when she felt it a prickling at the back of her neck. Someone was watching. Her eyes darted to the edge of the lot. Under the yellow wash of a flickering streetlight, she saw a figure standing perfectly still. Too still. The silhouette of a man in a suit. She blinked, heart hammering. And just like that, the space was empty. No footsteps, no retreat, just absence. By the time she fumbled her door open, her breath was shallow. Maybe grief was making her see things, or maybe not. The next morning, Ellie made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for the police to trickle out updates. She'd waited 12 years and received nothing but silence and lies. If Robert Hayes knew more, she would find out. Detective Miles Corbin had given her his number. She called him before dawn, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. "I'm going to the drive-in," she told him. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "The Starlight Drive-In? It's been shut down for years." "I know," Ellie said. "That's where they disappeared. That's where it started. If anyone still remembers anything, I'll find them." "Ellie," Corbin said carefully, "I can meet you there." "No," she cut in. "I need to do this myself." And before he could argue, she hung up. The Starlight Drive-In sat on the outskirts of Athens, a skeleton of what it had once been. The giant screen that had lit up her teenage summers was cracked and peeling. Graffiti splattered across its base. The ticket booth was boarded shut. The parking lot fractured with weeds breaking through the asphalt. Ellie stood there in the morning haze, her chest aching with the ghost of laughter and popcorn, the echo of her sister's voice. She could almost see Sarah leaning against that red Mustang, grinning at the camera with Jess at her side. The image felt so alive, and yet all around her was decay. She wasn't sure what she hoped to find, but she started asking questions anyway. Old directories in the library pointed her toward one name: George Hemlock, the projectionist. He had been in his 60s back then. If he was still alive, he'd be in his 70s now. She drove across town, heart racing, until she reached a small bungalow shaded by oak trees. A mailbox with the name Hemlock still stood crooked at the curb. When she knocked, the door creaked open, and an old man with cloudy eyes peered through the screen. His hair was white and wispy, his face lined with age. "Mr. Hemlock?" Ellie asked softly. "Yes," he rasped, suspicion sharp in his tone. "My name is Elena Monroe. My sister Sarah disappeared here in 1991. I was hoping I could ask you some questions." His gaze softened, recognition flickering. "The Monroe girl," he whispered. "Yes, I remember. A tragedy." He unlatched the screen and gestured her inside. The house smelled of dust and old books, the air thick with stillness. They sat in the living room, where the ticking of a grandfather clock filled the silence. "I don't know what I can tell you," Hemlock said. "The police questioned me back then. I told them everything I knew." Ellie leaned forward. "Are you sure? Sometimes after time details come back. Things you didn't think were important." He sighed, staring at his trembling hands. "Truth is, they barely questioned me at all. Sheriff Vance showed up for 5 minutes, asked routine questions, and left. He seemed to have already made up his mind." "Runaways," Ellie muttered bitterly. Hemlock nodded. "Yes, that's what he said." He hesitated, his eyes growing distant, as though pulling a memory from fog. "But there was something I never told them." Ellie's heart thudded. "What was it?" Hemlock rubbed his chin. "A few nights before the girls disappeared, Tuesday or Wednesday. I think I saw Robert Hayes near the back entrance. The service road." Ellie frowned. "Jess's father?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. He was arguing with another man. Heated, angry. I remember because it seemed so out of place at a family drive-in. The other man was sharply dressed, expensive car. Not local. I never saw him again." Ellie froze. Robert Hayes had never mentioned being at the drive-in that week. Why would he lie? "And who was the man in the suit?" "Did you tell the sheriff?" she asked. Hemlock gave a humorless chuckle. He didn't want to hear it. I figured it wasn't important. But to Ellie, it was everything. She thanked him and left, her mind spinning. Robert Hayes, the grieving father, had argued with a stranger in a suit days before his daughter vanished. And yesterday at the lake, He had whispered words that didn't sound like grief, they sounded like guilt. Ellie drove straight to Robert's house. His place was a sagging two-story on the edge of town, blinds drawn, the yard overgrown. She rang the bell. No answer. She knocked harder. Finally, the door cracked open. Robert stood there, haggard, eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. "Ellie," he muttered, almost panicked. "You shouldn't be here. We need to talk," she said firmly. "I know you were at the drive-in that week. Hemlock saw you. Who were you arguing with?" His face drained of color. "You don't understand," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be listening. "You have no idea what you're walking into." "Then tell me," Ellie pressed. "Tell me why Sarah is dead and Jess is gone." He shook his head violently. "I can't. If I tell you, they'll kill her." Ellie's heart slammed. "Kill who?" Robert's eyes welled. His voice cracked. "Jess. She's alive. But if they find out I've said anything, she won't be for long." The words hit Ellie like a lightning strike. Alive. After 12 years, Jess was alive. Before she could say more, Robert pushed past her, fumbling with his car keys. "I have to go," he stammered. "You shouldn't have come. Robert, wait." But he was already backing out of the driveway, tires screeching as he disappeared into the humid Georgia night. Ellie stood frozen, her pulse racing, the echo of his words burning in her chest. Jess was alive, but in whose hands? And why had Robert Hayes been part of it all along? As Ellie turned back toward her car, headlights suddenly flared at the end of the street. A black sedan idled there, engine humming low. For a moment it didn't move. Then, slowly, it rolled forward. Had they already been watching her? The black sedan crept down the street like a predator testing its prey. Ellie's heart jolted as she stood in Robert Hayes' driveway, the humid Georgia air thick enough to choke her. The headlights washed over her for a long, suffocating second before the car slowly rolled past, turning the corner without so much as a honk or glance. But the silence it left behind was worse than any threat. She climbed into her own car, hands trembling on the wheel, replaying Robert's words. "Jess is alive. Alive." The word didn't soothe her. It set her nerves on fire. If Jess had survived 12 years, it meant she had been hidden, controlled, used, and Robert knew more than he had admitted. The next morning, Detective Miles Corbin called her in. The conference room at the Athens Police Department smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet. Corbin spread files across the table, his expression unreadable. "Robert Hayes was spotted leaving town late last night," Corbin said, "headed west on Highway 78. Patrol units lost him near Greensboro." Ellie's chest tightened. "He's running." Corbin shook his head. "Not sure, but there's something you need to know." He slid a file toward her. Photographs of counterfeit bills, stacks of them seized from a raid in Macon last year. The ink, the cut, the serial numbers, perfect forgeries. "This ties to a man named Adrian Shaw," Corbin said. "Name ring a bell?" Ellie shook her head. "Businessman," Corbin continued, "based in Atlanta, runs legitimate import companies on paper. Underneath? He's the prime suspect behind one of the South's biggest counterfeit operations. We've been circling him for years but can't get anything to stick." Ellie frowned. "What does this have to do with Sarah and Jess?" Corbin leaned closer. "I think your sister's disappearance wasn't random. That Mustang in the container wasn't just a cover-up. It was a message. Whoever killed Sarah and whoever's holding Jess has connections to Shaw." Ellie's stomach knotted. A faceless man in a suit. Hemlock's memory of Robert arguing with someone wealthy, out of place. Could it have been Shaw? "Why Robert?" she asked. "He's just a mechanic." "Why would he be involved?" Corbin hesitated. "Because Shaw doesn't deal with strangers. He controls people. Debts, favors, threats. If Robert was involved, it wasn't by choice." The thought left Ellie cold. Robert's words the day before replayed again. "If they find out I've said anything, she won't be for long." Corbin's phone buzzed. He read the text, jaw tightening. "Speak of the devil," he muttered. "Robert Hayes just checked into a motel outside Madison. Looks like he wants to talk." The motel was one of those places built in the 70s and left to rot. Neon sign buzzing, paint peeling, a swimming pool filled with algae. Room 14. Ellie followed Corbin down the walkway. Robert opened the door before they knocked, his eyes red, his hands shaking. "You shouldn't have brought her," he said to Corbin, glancing at Ellie. "She's already in it," Corbin replied. Robert collapsed onto the edge of the bed, running his hands over his face. "I've been living with this for 12 years, he whispered. Every night, every day, waiting for them to kill her. Ellie stepped closer. "Then tell me everything. Don't hold back." Robert's voice broke. "It started with money. I owed gambling debts, bad loans. Adrian Shaw stepped in, said he could make it all disappear if I did a few jobs for him. Moving packages. No questions asked. I didn't have a choice." You always have a choice," Ellie snapped. Robert's eyes filled with tears. "Not when they threaten your daughter. Not when they tell you that if you slip up, they'll bury her where no one will ever find her." Ellie froze. "Jess?" Robert nodded. "They took her that night. Both girls. But Sarah fought. She screamed, clawed at them. She wouldn't stop, so they silenced her, right there in front of me. And then they told me if I wanted Jess to live, I'd keep my mouth shut and do exactly what they said." Ellie's knees weakened. "You watched them kill Sarah?" Robert's voice cracked. "I watched my daughter dragged away. I watched your sister fall. And then I helped load that car into the container. I dug my own grave that night." The room spun. Ellie couldn't breathe. She wanted to hit him, to scream, but grief pinned her still. Corbin's tone hardened. "Where's Jess now?" Robert shook his head. "I don't know. They move her. Farmhouses, basements, always guarded, but I've been in contact. Little signals. They let me see proof of life once a year. She's alive, but she's not free." Ellie's heart clenched. 12 years of captivity. What kind of life was that? "Why tell us now?" Corbin asked. Robert swallowed. "Because I can't do it anymore. They think they own me, but I can't keep living like this." He looked at Ellie, tears streaking his face. "I know you hate me. You should. But if we work together, maybe we can bring her back." Ellie's voice shook with rage. "You let Sarah die." Robert bowed his head. "And I'll carry that to my grave. But Jess can still be saved." Corbin broke the silence. "Then you're going to help us. You're going to get us inside Shaw's operation." Robert nodded, resigned. "But it won't be easy. Shaw doesn't trust anyone. He has people inside law enforcement, watching every move. You make one wrong step, and Jess is dead." The weight of his words settled like lead. Later, back in the squad car, Ellie stared out at the Georgia highway, neon signs flickering by. Her hands trembled with adrenaline, grief, fury. "Why didn't you arrest him?" she asked Corbin. "Because right now he's our only way in," Corbin replied. "He's not innocent, but he's leverage." Ellie's chest ached. "You think Jess is really alive?" Corbin's gaze was steady on the road. "I think we just opened a door. Now the question is, what's waiting on the other side?" As they drove, a billboard flashed past advertising a new luxury development funded by Shaw Enterprises. A gleaming tower under construction in downtown Atlanta, smiling faces in the ad, the promise of prosperity. But Ellie saw only rot behind the shine. That night, alone in her apartment, Ellie couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Robert's confession, Sarah's last moments replaying in her mind. She walked to the window, looking down at the quiet street. And there it was again, the black sedan. Parked across the road, engine idling, headlights off, watching, waiting. Her stomach dropped. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number, a single text. "Stop digging, or she dies." Ellie's hands shook as she clutched the phone, staring at the message glowing in the dark. Her pulse thundered. Jess was alive. Someone knew she was searching. And now, someone was warning her to stop. But how do you stop when your sister's life is on the line? The text glowed in the darkness of Ellie's apartment like a curse. "Stop digging, or she dies." Her hands shook as she read it again and again, willing it to change, for the words to rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. But they didn't. Someone knew she was searching. Someone had eyes on her. She sat on the edge of her bed until dawn seeped through the blinds, her thoughts a storm. Every instinct screamed to back off, to save Jess by retreating into silence. But silence had killed Sarah. Silence had buried that red Mustang beneath a lake. Silence had chained Jess for 12 years. Ellie wasn't going to be silent anymore. Detective Miles Corbin found her pacing outside the Athens precinct later that morning, exhaustion etched across her face. He looked grim, holding a file in one hand and coffee in the other. "You got a text?" he asked without preamble. Ellie nodded. "From them. Whoever's holding Jess, they know what we're doing." Corbin handed her the coffee. "Then it means we're close. Close enough to scare them." She stared at him, searching for reassurance. "What do we do now?" Corbin opened the file, flipping it toward her. Inside were surveillance photos. Adrian Shaw, mid-40s, sharp suit, silver tie pin, smiling like a man who owned the world. In one photo, he was stepping out of a luxury sedan. In another, cutting a ribbon at a construction site with city officials at his side. The gleaming Shaw Tower project loomed behind him. "This man doesn't dirty his hands," Corbin said. "But he runs everything. Counterfeit operations, shell companies, payoffs. We've tried to touch him before, but he's always 3 steps ahead, too many friends in high places." Ellie's stomach nodded. "And he's the one holding Jess." Corbin's eyes hardened. "He's the one profiting from her, from keeping her hidden. And if we want her back, we need to smoke him out." Robert Hayes joined them in the briefing room. He looked like hell stubble on his chin, hands shaking, the guilt of 12 years sitting heavy on his shoulders. But there was something else in his face now. Resolve. "I can get him to move," Robert said, his voice raw. "Shaw's paranoid. He's always watching law enforcement channels. If he thinks there's a raid on one of his printing warehouses, he'll scramble. He'll send people, maybe even show up himself." Corbin leaned back, considering. "A decoy strike." Robert nodded. "Yeah. Make him think you've got him cornered. While he's distracted, you hit the real safe house. That's where Jess will be." Ellie's pulse quickened. "But how do we know where she is?" Robert hesitated, then pulled a crumpled slip of paper from his pocket. An address, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Farmhouse, North Georgia. He's kept her there before. It's one of his fallback spots. If he thinks the cops are busy in Atlanta, he might move her there again. It's your best shot." Corbin studied Robert's face. "If this is a setup, if you're playing us..." Robert raised his hands. "I'm not, I swear. I'm done lying. I just want my daughter back." Ellie looked between them, her throat tight. "Then let's do it." That night, the plan went into motion. The raid in Atlanta was theater, a full display of lights, sirens, armored vehicles, even SWAT units staged around one of Shaw's warehouses. News choppers circled above, broadcasting live footage of what looked like the takedown of the year. Shaw's people would see it, panic, and report straight to him. From a nondescript van 2 miles away, Ellie, Corbin, and Robert listened to the radio chatter. Corbin's jaw was tight, his hand tapping against his knee. "This is risky," he murmured. "If Shaw calls the bluff, Jess pays the price." Ellie leaned forward. "Then we don't let him call it. We move fast." Robert stared at the floor. "He'll know something's wrong if you don't find anything in that warehouse. You'll have to make noise, buy time. Once he panics, he'll head for the farmhouse." The minutes ticked by like hours. Then the call came through an encrypted signal Corbin had tapped into. A man's voice, sharp and urgent. "Burn it all. Get her out of the farmhouse. Now." Ellie's heart jumped. He said farmhouse. He said her. Corbin didn't hesitate. "That's our move. Let's go." The drive into North Georgia was tense, the roads winding through pine forests and empty fields under a sky bruised with thunderclouds. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drumming against the windshield. Ellie's thoughts raced with every mile closer. She pictured Jess older now, 25, but frozen in time to Ellie as the teenager with a wide smile and messy braids. What would 12 years of captivity have done to her? Would she even recognize Ellie anymore? Robert's voice broke the silence. "She won't be the same," he whispered. "They've taken everything from her, but she's still my daughter, still worth saving. Ellie clenched her fists. She's worth everything. They turned onto a dirt road, mud splattering as the van bounced. Ahead through the rain, the farmhouse emerged 2 stories of rotting wood, a collapsed barn nearby. No lights visible, but Ellie could feel the weight of eyes in the dark. Corbin killed the engine, pulling binoculars to his eyes. 2 guards on the porch, another at the barn. Armed. No sign of Jess. Ellie's chest tightened. Then she's inside. Corbin glanced at Robert. If this goes sideways, Shaw will kill her before we get 10 feet through that door. Robert's voice shook. Then we can't make it go sideways. They crept closer, the rain covering their footsteps. Ellie's heart hammered in her ears. Every drop of water felt like the countdown of a clock. From the porch, one guard lit a cigarette, the ember glowing in the storm. Corbin raised his gun, whispering, "On my mark." But before he could finish, headlights flared down the driveway. A black SUV tore through the mud, stopping hard in front of the farmhouse. The guards scrambled. The back door opened, and out stepped Adrian Shaw. Even in the downpour, he looked immaculate, tailored suit, slicked hair, eyes scanning the property like a general surveying a battlefield. He spoke to the guards with calm authority, his voice just audible through the rain. "Move her," Shaw said. "Now." Ellie's breath caught. He was here, and Jess was still inside. Corbin's hand tightened on his weapon. "We have one shot at this." Robert's face went pale, his body trembling. "If he sees me, it's over. He'll know I've betrayed him. And—" Ellie's blood ran cold. This was the moment. Years of silence, grief, rage, all leading here. She leaned forward, whispering through the storm, "Then let's end it." From inside the farmhouse came a muffled cry, faint but unmistakable. A woman's voice. "Jess." Shaw's head snapped toward the sound. His eyes narrowed, and then, slowly, he turned, looking straight toward the tree line where Ellie hid. Had he already known they were there all along? The rain came down in sheets, hammering the tin roof of the farmhouse like war drums. Mud splashed under the guards' boots as they hustled to obey Shaw's orders. Ellie pressed her back against the dripping bark of a pine tree, her breath shallow. She could still hear it, that cry from inside. Jess was in there, alive. After 12 years, the sound of her voice had cut through the storm and pierced Ellie's heart like a knife. Corbin crouched beside her, his pistol drawn. He spoke low, steady, the voice of a man who had trained for chaos. "We don't get another chance. We go in now. We end it." Ellie's eyes burned with tears, but her voice was hard steel. "Then we get her out. Tonight." Robert was shaking so badly his teeth chattered. "He saw me once before. If he sees me now." Ellie grabbed his wrist, squeezing until he met her eyes. "Look at me, Robert. Jess is in there. You don't get to run this time. You owe her." Robert's face crumpled, guilt breaking through fear. He nodded, swallowing hard. Okay. They moved through the tree line, rain masking their steps. Corbin signaled for silence, his fingers crisp in the wet night. Shaw stood in the driveway, perfectly still despite the downpour, his suit darkened by rain but his posture unbending. He held an umbrella now, as if he were some executive waiting for a valet. But those eyes swept across the tree line with predatory calm. Ellie froze. "Does he already know we're here?" Shaw turned to one of his guards. "Upstairs. Get her ready. If the cops are closing in, we don't leave loose ends." Ellie's chest clenched. "Loose ends. Jess." Corbin whispered, "We take out the guards first, quietly, then Shaw." The plan disintegrated almost immediately. One of the guards on the porch flicked his cigarette, the ember glowing in the dark, and his gaze landed on movement in the trees. "Over there," he shouted, raising his rifle. The night erupted in gunfire. Ellie dove behind a log as bullets shredded branches above her. Corbin returned fire, precise, calm, dropping the man with the rifle. Another guard charged from the barn, shouting over the storm. Robert cowered, hands over his head. Ellie grabbed his arm, dragging him toward the porch. "Move." They stumbled through the mud, adrenaline pushing Ellie forward. Corbin covered them, his shots cracking like thunder, until they reached the side of the house. The door was locked, chained from the inside. Ellie slammed her shoulder against it once, twice, pain jolting down her arm. No give. Corbin joined them, pulling a crowbar from his belt. "Stand back." With one savage thrust, the wood splintered. They spilled inside. The farmhouse smelled of mold and rot. The floorboards warped beneath their boots. The hallway was dark, lined with peeling wallpaper and family photos that looked like ghosts staring from another century. From above came the sound of a door slamming, then hurried footsteps. "She's upstairs," Ellie whispered, voice trembling. Corbin raised his gun. "Stay behind me." They crept up the staircase, every creak of wood threatening to betray them. The air grew colder, heavier. Ellie's breath fogged in the dim light. At the top of the stairs, a figure appeared, another guard, shotgun raised. Ellie's heart stopped. Corbin fired first. The man crumpled, shotgun clattering down the hallway. Robert gasped, stumbling backward. "God, oh God." "Keep moving," Corbin barked. They sprinted down the hall, following the muffled cries. The sound grew clearer with each step, until Ellie reached a reinforced door. Steel bars, padlocks. The prison of 12 years. Jess was behind this door. "Jess!" Ellie cried, slamming her fists against the metal. "It's me. It's Ellie." Inside, a broken voice answered. "Ellie?" Ellie's chest cracked open. Tears spilled hot down her face. "Yes, baby, I'm here. I'm here." She yanked at the lock, her fingers bloodying against rusted iron. Nothing gave. Corbin cursed under his breath. "We need a key, or—" He didn't finish. A gunshot exploded at the end of the hall. Wood splinters flew. Adrian Shaw stepped from the shadows. Even soaked, his presence was suffocating. Shaw's hair was plastered back, his jaw hard, eyes cold fire. He held a pistol aimed directly at them. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly, almost conversational. "Now you'll die with her." Ellie's body went rigid. Her breath came fast and shallow. Corbin leveled his gun, voice steady. "Drop it, Shaw." Shaw smiled, a chilling, deliberate smile. "Detective Corbin, you never learn, do you? There are always bigger men behind me. Men you'll never touch." Robert stepped forward, trembling, hands out. "Adrian, please, she's my daughter. Don't hurt her. Use me instead." Shaw's smile widened. "Ah, Robert. The loyal little pawn. I warned you what betrayal costs." He raised the gun toward Robert. Ellie didn't think. She lunged forward, slamming her shoulder into Shaw. The gun fired once, twice bullets shattering plaster. Corbin tackled Shaw, both men crashing into the wall, grappling for control of the gun. "Go, Ellie," Corbin roared. "Get Jess." Ellie spun back to the door, clawing at the lock. Robert stumbled forward, snatching the shotgun from the fallen guard. His hands shook, sweat dripping down his face. "Do it," Ellie screamed. "Blow it off." Robert's eyes filled with tears. He aimed, fired. The lock shattered, sparks and metal flying. Ellie shoved the door open, and there she was. Jess. She was curled in the corner of the attic room, thin as paper, wrists bruised from chains. Her hair hung in tangled knots, her eyes wide, wild with fear. Ellie dropped to her knees. "Jess. Oh God, Jess." Jess flinched back, shielding her face. "It's me," Ellie whispered, voice breaking. "It's your sister. You're safe now." Jess stared at her, trembling, confusion and recognition fighting in her eyes. Slowly, she reached out a shaking hand. Ellie grasped it, pulling her into a hug, sobbing. "I've got you. I'm here. I won't let go." Behind them, Corbin and Shaw crashed against the hallway wall, the gun skidding across the floor. Shaw snarled, eyes burning with hatred. "You think this ends with me?" He spat, his voice venom. "You have no idea how deep it goes." Corbin pinned him, struggling for control. "Then start talking." The attic trembled with footsteps, more men storming up the stairs. Shaw's reinforcements. Ellie clutched Jess tight, heart pounding. Robert shouted, "They're coming!" Corbin grabbed his weapon, dragging Shaw up by the collar, using him as leverage. "Downstairs," he ordered. "We move now." Ellie lifted Jess in her arms, the girl light as a child, and followed as thunder shook the farmhouse. They reached the landing just as shadows filled the stairwell, 3 men with rifles. Corbin raised his gun, pulling Shaw tight against him. "Stand down," he barked, "or he dies." The men froze, hesitating, rain and thunder echoing outside. For one breathless moment, it seemed to work. Then Shaw laughed. A cold, hollow laugh that froze Ellie's blood. "Do you really think they answer to me?" Shaw hissed. The men raised their rifles again, aiming straight at the group. Ellie clutched Jess tighter as gun barrels leveled at their chests. If Shaw wasn't the one truly in charge, then who was? The world slowed into fragments of sound. The patter of rain, the crackle of thunder, the shallow breaths of Jess in Ellie's arms. And then the unmistakable click of rifles being cocked in unison. Ellie froze, holding Jess tighter, feeling her sister's frail body trembling against her chest. 3 men stood at the bottom of the stairs, rifles trained upward. Their faces were shadowed, their movements precise. These weren't farmhands or local thugs. They were soldiers. Corbin kept his pistol jammed against Shaw's temple. "Drop your weapons now." The men didn't flinch. One of them, tall, scar down his cheek, spoke in a flat, calm voice. "We don't take orders from him, or you." Ellie's blood ran cold. "They don't take orders from Shaw. Then who did they answer to?" Shaw laughed, bitter and sharp. "I told you, detective. You have no idea how far this goes." Corbin's jaw tightened. He fired a warning shot into the floor, splinters flying. "Last chance." The scarred man raised his rifle, sighting directly on Ellie. Everything erupted at once. Gunfire thundered in the hallway. Ellie ducked, clutching Jess as bullets tore through plaster and wood. Corbin shoved Shaw forward, using him as a shield, while Robert, his hands trembling, raised the shotgun and fired down the stairs. One of the guards screamed, collapsing. Another returned fire, the stairwell shaking with every shot. "Move," Corbin shouted, dragging Shaw by the collar. "Out the back." Ellie ran, Jess clinging weakly around her neck. Robert stumbled after them, reloading with shaky hands. They barreled down the hallway, bullets chasing them like hornets. Ellie felt one tear across her sleeve, hot pain slicing her arm. She gasped but kept running. Jess's breath was shallow, her lips murmuring broken words Ellie couldn't understand. They burst into the kitchen. Rain hammered the windows. The back door loomed like salvation. Corbin kicked it open, only to find 2 more men waiting outside, rifles raised. "Down!" he barked, firing blindly as Ellie dove behind the counter with Jess. Glass shattered, dishes exploded across the floor. Robert screamed, dropping the shotgun as it skidded under the table. Ellie's pulse pounded in her ears. They were trapped. Shaw twisted violently in Corbin's grip, slamming his head back. Corbin staggered, just enough for Shaw to wrench free. With shocking speed, Shaw snatched a knife from his belt and slashed across Corbin's arm. Corbin grunted, blood blooming instantly. Ellie's heart lurched. "Miles!" Shaw's eyes blazed, his face twisted with rage. "You should have stayed silent." He lunged toward Ellie and Jess, knife glinting in the dim light. Ellie screamed, clutching Jess, bracing for the blade. A deafening blast filled the kitchen. Shaw staggered back, blood spraying across the cabinets. Robert stood there, wild-eyed, the shotgun clutched to his shoulder. His hands shook so violently he almost dropped it. I had to," Robert stammered, his voice breaking. Shaw crumpled to the floor, groaning but not dead. His men outside shouted, pounding at the door. Corbin grabbed Robert by the collar, dragging him toward the pantry. "Basement. Now." They tumbled into the darkness of the cellar, slamming the door shut above them. The narrow space reeked of damp earth and mildew, lined with shelves of rusted cans. Ellie set Jess gently against the wall. Her sister's face was pale, her lips trembling. She looked like a ghost, barely tethered to life. Ellie brushed the hair from her forehead, whispering, "Stay with me, Jess, please. We're so close." Above them, boots pounded across the kitchen floor. The guards shouted, overturning furniture. searching. Corbin pressed his bleeding arm, face grim. They'll find us in minutes. We need another way out. Robert sank to his knees, rocking back and forth. I never wanted this. I thought leaking the sonar would end it quietly. I never thought— Enough, Corbin snapped. We don't survive if you fall apart now. Ellie spotted a narrow coal chute in the corner, half covered with debris. She pointed. There, that leads outside. Corbin tested it. Rust groaned, earth crumbled, but it was a way out. Ellie, you take Jess. Robert, you follow. I'll hold them off. No, Ellie hissed, fury blazing in her chest. You're not dying here. Corbin met her eyes. For the first time, she saw fear flicker behind his calm exterior, but also something else. Resignation. If they catch Jess again, he said quietly, it'll be worse than death. Go. Ellie's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to scream, but Jess whimpered against her shoulder, too weak to move. The decision was made. They crawled toward the chute. Mud smeared across their clothes, the smell of damp earth filling their lungs. Ellie shoved Jess through first, whispering encouragement. Robert followed, grunting as he squeezed his larger frame into the narrow tunnel. Ellie turned back once, locking eyes with Corbin. He gave her a single nod. Then he raised his pistol, aiming at the cellar door as boots stomped above. The last thing Ellie heard as she crawled into the darkness was his voice, steady and defiant. Come and get me. 1. Rain lashed against Ellie's face as she and Robert dragged Jess out of the chute into the woods behind the farmhouse. They collapsed in the mud, gasping for breath. The storm raged, wind tearing through the pines. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the farmhouse. Gunfire cracked inside, echoing through the night. Ellie's heart screamed to run back, to help Corbin. But Jess clutched her arm, whispering with a voice like broken glass. Don't. Leave me. Ellie's tears mixed with rain. Never. I'll never leave you again. Robert grabbed her shoulder. We have to move. If Corbin doesn't make it, if they find us here, we're dead too. Ellie hesitated, staring at the glowing farmhouse windows, each flash of lightning carving it into a silhouette of hell. Corbin was still in there, and she had no idea if he was still alive. A gunshot exploded inside the farmhouse, louder, final, followed by silence. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. Was it Corbin? Or Shaw? The gunshot rolled through the storm like a cannon, followed by a silence so deep it drowned even the thunder. Ellie froze in the mud, her arms wrapped tightly around Jess. The farmhouse loomed behind them, its broken windows glowing with intermittent flashes of lightning. No more shouts, no more gunfire, just silence. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Was it Corbin? Was it Shaw? The rain stung her skin like shards of glass. Beside her, Robert crouched low, his face ghostly pale in the stormlight. He clutched the shotgun like a lifeline, though his shaking hands betrayed him. Ellie's heart thundered. We have to move, now. They stumbled into the woods, the storm swallowing their footsteps. Branches clawed at their clothes, mud sucked at their boots, and every gust of wind threatened to knock them off balance. Jess was a fragile weight in Ellie's arms, her body trembling, lips whispering incoherent fragments. Dark, too dark, please. Ellie pressed her cheek against her sister's wet hair. I've got you. I won't let go. The trees swayed violently, bending under the force of the wind. Lightning split the night, illuminating the forest in harsh skeletal flashes. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat. Behind them, a faint beam of light flickered through the rain. Flashlights, voices. They're in the woods, find them. Ellie's stomach dropped. They're hunting us. Robert pushed ahead, his boots sinking into the mud. This way. There's a logging road about half a mile north. If we can reach it, maybe— A gunshot cracked, bark exploding from a tree inches from his head. Down! Ellie hissed, dropping to her knees with Jess. Bullets tore through the forest, slicing through branches, sending splinters flying. Jess whimpered, covering her ears. Ellie's fury ignited. How dare they fire on her, after everything? She crawled forward, dragging Jess, heart hammering in her throat. Robert fired blindly into the darkness, his shotgun blasts swallowed by the storm. We can't outrun them, he shouted. Ellie's eyes scanned the chaos. Lightning lit the forest again, and she saw it a ravine, deep and jagged, about 50 yards ahead. Over there, she pointed. The drop might hide us. They sprinted through the mud, slipping, stumbling. Jess clung to Ellie's neck, too weak to stand. Another gunshot rang out, this one closer. Robert cried out, collapsing to one knee. Ellie's heart lurched. Robert! He clutched his leg, blood streaming down his thigh. Keep going. Don't stop. Ellie hesitated. Leave him? After all his failures, his betrayals, every mistake that had led to this nightmare, he was still Jess's father. No, she snarled. She hauled his arm over her shoulder, forcing him up. You're coming with us. Together they stumbled toward the ravine as flashlights closed in from behind. The ravine yawned before them, a black scar in the earth, swollen with storm water rushing below. Robert's face twisted with panic. We can't cross that. It's suicide. Ellie scanned the bank. A fallen pine tree stretched across the gap, slick with rain, barely wide enough to walk. We don't have a choice. She looked down at Jess, whose wide eyes reflected the flashes of lightning. Do you trust me? Jess's voice was a broken whisper. Yes. Ellie swallowed hard. Then hold on. Balancing Jess in her arms, Ellie stepped onto the log. The wood shifted under her weight, slick and treacherous. The roar of the water below swallowed her heartbeat. She moved slowly, each step deliberate. The rain hammered down, lightning blinding her for half seconds at a time. Behind her, Robert limped onto the log, clutching the shotgun for balance. Don't look down, Ellie whispered. Just keep moving. A gunshot cracked. The bark inches from her feet exploded, the log shuddering. Ellie screamed, almost slipping. Jess clung tighter, her small hands digging into Ellie's neck. Flashlights danced on the far bank. Shaw's men were closing in. Robert shouted, his voice raw with rage and desperation. Go, Ellie. Get her across. Ellie forced herself forward, teeth clenched, until her boots touched solid ground. She stumbled onto the far bank, collapsing to her knees with Jess still in her arms. Behind her, Robert was halfway across, the log swaying under his weight. Another gunshot. Robert's body jerked violently. The shotgun tumbled into the river below. Ellie screamed. No. He swayed, clutching the log, blood streaming down his chest. Go, Robert roared, his voice breaking. Take her, don't look back. And then he fell. The rushing black water swallowed him whole. Ellie's sob was drowned by thunder. She clutched Jess, shaking, tears blurring her vision. There was no time to grieve. Flashlights still danced on the far side of the ravine. Shaw's men shouted, searching for another way across. Ellie forced herself to her feet, staggering into the forest. Her legs burned, lungs screamed, but she kept moving. Jess murmured against her neck, half conscious. You're safe, Ellie whispered through tears. I swear you're safe. But her words felt fragile in the storm. Minutes or hours later, they stumbled onto the logging road Robert had mentioned. Muddy tire tracks cut through the trees, glistening with rain. Ellie collapsed onto the shoulder, cradling Jess. The girl's skin was ice cold, her breaths shallow. Ellie brushed wet hair from her forehead, whispering, Stay awake, Jess. Just a little longer. Headlights appeared down the road. Ellie's heart stopped. Were they rescue? Or more hunters? She crouched low, shielding Jess, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The headlights drew closer, splashing through puddles. A black SUV. Her stomach clenched. Shaw's men. The vehicle slowed, brakes squealing on the wet road. Ellie's breath came fast, her fingers gripping Jess tighter. The passenger door opened. A figure stepped out. Lightning flashed, and in that instant, she saw his face. Corbin, soaked, wounded, blood running down his arm but alive. Relief crashed through Ellie like a tidal wave. Miles, she cried, stumbling forward with Jess. He rushed to them, his face etched with pain and determination. You made it, he whispered. He touched Jess's cheek gently. We're getting her out of here. Jess blinked, recognition flickering faintly in her eyes. But before Ellie could breathe, before she could feel the victory, Corbin's expression hardened. They're still coming, he said, voice low. And we're not out of the woods yet. The storm howled around them, trees bending, the road stretching into darkness. Ellie held Jess close, her heart pounding. They had escaped the farmhouse. But the fight, the true fight for survival, was only beginning. From the SUV's radio crackled a voice, cold, calm, chillingly familiar. Bring the girl alive, no mistakes. Ellie's stomach twisted. If Shaw wasn't in charge anymore, then who was? The SUV's radio hissed with static, then a voice cut through, calm, chilling, certain. Bring the girl alive, no mistakes. Ellie's stomach clenched. It wasn't Shaw. Shaw was bleeding on the floor of that farmhouse. This voice belonged to someone else, someone higher, someone who had pulled the strings all along. Corbin's jaw tightened as he reached for the radio, switching it off, his eyes locked with Ellie's, rain dripping down his face. We don't have much time. Whoever gave that order, they're already closing in. Ellie cradled Jess against her chest. Her sister's fragile frame shook in the storm, her lips moving with broken whispers. No, no light. Don't take me back. Ellie pressed her forehead against Jess's. You're safe now, I promise. But deep inside, fear gnawed at her. Promises meant nothing if she couldn't keep Jess alive. The SUV roared down the logging road, headlights slicing through the sheets of rain. Corbin's knuckles whitened around the wheel, every bump in the road jarring his wounded arm. Ellie sat in the back, clutching Jess close, whispering soothing words. Robert was gone, swallowed by the river, and the grief sat heavy in her chest, but there was no time to mourn. Where are we going? Ellie demanded over the storm. Safe house outside Athens, Corbin said. Federal property, no leaks, no local cops. It's the only place I trust. Lightning cracked, illuminating the road. In the flash, Ellie saw headlights appear in the rearview mirror. Black SUVs, 2 of them. They're on us, she whispered. Corbin's jaw tightened. Hold on. The chase began. The road twisted through the forest, slick with mud and rain. Corbin pushed the SUV hard, tires skidding, branches slapping against the windows. The vehicles behind gained ground, engines growling like predators. Ellie shielded Jess with her body, heart hammering. They won't stop. They'll kill us all just to keep her quiet. Corbin's eyes flicked to the mirror. Then we don't give them the chance. Gunfire erupted, bullets pinging against the rear panel. The glass shattered, wind and rain blasting into the car. Jess screamed, covering her ears. Ellie ducked low, wrapping herself around her sister. It's okay, baby. It's okay. Corbin yanked the wheel hard, sending the SUV skidding around a curve. The pursuing vehicles fishtailed, mud-spraying, but kept coming. Glove compartment, Corbin shouted. Get the flares. Ellie fumbled with one hand, pulling out a red flare. What do I? Throw it when I say. The headlights behind grew closer, beams cutting through the storm. Corbin swerved sharply. Now! Ellie lit the flare, the crimson glow painting her face. With a scream, she hurled it out the back window. The flare bounced across the road, then ignited a slick of oil that Corbin had swerved over. Fire exploded behind them, engulfing one of the pursuing SUVs. The other braked hard, swerving to avoid the flames. Ellie clutched Jess tighter, adrenaline surging. Oh my God, it worked! Corbin's voice was grim. For now. They reached the outskirts of Athens as dawn broke, the rain finally easing into mist. Corbin pulled the battered SUV into an underground garage beneath an unmarked federal building. For the first time in hours, silence. Ellie carried Jess inside, her arms aching. The building smelled of disinfectant and concrete, sterile and secure. Agents in plain clothes moved quickly, eyes sharp, but Corbin waved them off. She's priority 1. Full medical. No names, no files outside this building. Ellie laid Jess gently on a cot as medics swarmed. Needles, 4 drips, hushed voices. Jess flinched at every touch, her eyes darting in panic. Ellie stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering, I'm not leaving, not ever again. Corbin stood by the doorway, speaking in low tones to another agent. Ellie caught fragments. Shaw compromised. Bigger players. Cover up. Then Corbin turned to her. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with determination. "This isn't over, Ellie. Shaw was just a lieutenant. The voice on that radio? That's the real monster. And he won't stop until Jess is silenced for good." Ellie's heart squeezed. "Then we don't stop either." The following days blurred together. Jess remained under sedation, her body fragile, mind fractured. Ellie barely slept, refusing to leave her sister's side. Corbin dug deeper. Files surfaced, old financial records, sealed indictments, names buried under layers of bureaucracy. Every trail led upward, into boardrooms and political offices. Shaw's counterfeiting ring had been just one arm of a vast network: money laundering, trafficking, corruption that reached to the state capitol and beyond. And at the center of it, a name: Charles Whitmore, a wealthy philanthropist and businessman, the voice on the radio. Whitmore had funded Shaw for years, hiding crimes under the mask of charity. He owned half the land around Lake Sinclair, where the container had been dumped. He had dinner with governors, shook hands with senators, and now he wanted Jess erased. Corbin slammed the file shut, his voice tight. "We have enough to put him away for life, but only if Jess testifies. And right now, she can't." Ellie's stomach churned. "She can barely speak, Miles. You saw what they did to her. She's not ready." Corbin looked at her, his face weary. "Then we protect her, no matter what it costs." Ellie reached across the table, gripping his hand. For the first time, she saw the toll it had taken on him too. The wounds, the sleepless nights, the weight of carrying so many broken cases. "You saved us," she whispered. He shook his head. "You saved her. I just helped." And a week later, the storm came back, not in the sky, but in the form of an ambush. Ellie had taken Jess to the courtyard for fresh air, the girl still pale and fragile but calmer in the sunlight. She was humming softly, a broken tune from childhood. For a brief moment, Ellie felt peace. Then the crack of gunfire shattered it. Glass exploded from the upper windows. Agents shouted. Ellie threw herself over Jess as bullets tore the benches apart. Corbin was there in an instant, tackling them behind cover. "They found us!" Ellie's ears rang, her heart pounding. Jess screamed, curling into her lap. Black-clad men poured into the courtyard, their movements surgical. These weren't Shaw's farmhands. They were professionals. "Go!" Corbin roared, firing back. "Get her inside." Ellie dragged Jess toward the stairwell, bullets ricocheting off concrete. Jess stumbled, sobbing, but Ellie pulled her on, every muscle screaming. Behind them, Corbin dropped 2 men, but more swarmed. One of them shouted into a radio, "Whitmore wants the girl alive. Move!" They reached the stairwell door locked. Ellie's panic surged. She slammed her shoulder against it once, twice. Nothing. The men were closing in. Jess sobbed, clutching Ellie's shirt. Then, with a primal scream, Ellie threw her full weight into the door. It burst open, the lock snapping, and they tumbled inside. They raced up the stairs, breath ragged, footsteps echoing. The building shook with gunfire below. At the top, Corbin burst through another door, blood on his temple, eyes blazing. "This way!" They sprinted onto the roof. Rain had started again, light at first, then heavier. Helicopter blades thundered in the distance. A black chopper loomed out of the mist, spotlights sweeping across the rooftop. Ellie's heart dropped. "They're here." Corbin raised his weapon, jaw set. "Then this is where we end it." The helicopter hovered, ropes dropping. Armed men rappelled down, boots slamming onto the roof. Whitmore's soldiers. Ellie clutched Jess, backing against the wall. Jess's whispers broke into sobs. "No more. No more dark." Corbin fired, dropping one man, then another. But there were too many. Bullets sparked against the rooftop, rain turning everything slick. A figure stepped out from the helicopter, calm, composed, untouched by the storm. Charles Whitmore, gray hair slicked back, immaculate suit, eyes cold as stone. He surveyed the chaos with the calm of a king on his throne. "You've caused quite the mess," he said, his voice smooth, carrying even over the storm. "But it ends here." Ellie's fury ignited. "You did this. You buried Sarah, you caged Jess, you destroyed everything. Whitmore tilted his head, almost pitying. Collateral. Nothing personal. But the truth has no place in a world built on order. Corbin snarled, raising his pistol. You're done, Whitmore. Whitmore smiled faintly. Am I? He steward. His men advanced. Ellie's back hit the wall. Jess clung to her, trembling. The storm screamed around them, and Ellie whispered fiercely into her sister's ear. Hold on, we fight together. The rooftop erupted in chaos, gunfire, thunder, rain. Ellie's scream tore through the storm as Whitmore's men closed in. The fate of Jess, and the truth buried for 12 years, would be decided here. But could justice survive the storm? At its heart, this story is not just about crime, corruption, or survival. It is about the unbreakable threads that tie human beings together, even in the darkest storms. Ellie's relentless search for her sister Jess embodies the essence of love that refuses to surrender, even when years of silence, deceit, and fear conspire to bury the truth. For 12 long years, she carried the weight of grief, the ache of unanswered questions. Yet when the smallest chance of Jess being alive appeared, she chose courage over despair. The narrative forces us to look closely at the shadows of society, the power of money to corrupt, the silence of institutions that should protect, and the way human lives are treated as expendable by those who believe themselves untouchable. And yet, through this bleakness, it reminds us of resilience. Jess, though broken and scarred, is still breathing proof that even the most fragile spirit can outlast cruelty. For audiences, especially those in adulthood who have weathered their own storms, the story resonates with the truth that healing is never simple and justice is never given. It must be fought for, at great cost. It is a reminder that silence is complicity, and that even ordinary voices, when lifted with conviction, can shatter the walls of power. Ultimately, the story offers a painful but vital hope that love, when held with unwavering strength, can reclaim what was stolen, mend what was broken, and light the path forward. It whispers that no matter how deep the storm, truth and love have the power to endure.